Tappe has just released Arc 9 Chapter 55, and this video will be a summary of the chapter. Ao's ability is an authority derived from a witch factor, but Ao himself does not possess a witch factor. The witch called this an irregularity. Aldebaran called it plagiarism. There is precedent. The witches of sin who acclimated to their witch factors and gained their authorities still retained some powers, even after being reduced to nothing but their soul. The witch believed that having a witch factor was like a key to open the door to influencing the world, meaning that even if you lost the witch factor, the door would still be open to you. This made sense for the witches of sin, but what about Aldebaran or the witch? And for that was the inheritance theory. When you had a deep connection with someone from birth who had a synchronized witch factor, that would leave the door half open for you. And as a result, there were issues. It would be easier if the door were fully open. Even if Ao understood his authority around 80%, he would still use it. From what he knew, there was a bug in the domain, where the holder of the matrix shifts from Aldebaran to another individual in the domain. Normally, Ao creates the domain from his own will, and as a result can attempt infinite times and retain his memories. However, when this bug occurs, it shifts to another person until the matrix dissolves. This bug occurred after he lost the first battle. It occurs whenever he loses faith and when he doubts his own power. On the Gladiator Island, against Leap Bariel, against Ye Tenzin, the bug occurred. The Witch of Greed is amazed. She had never heard of an authority that granted control to an opponent. The bug manifested again against her, showing that Ao doubted his own power. Ao had attacked the Witch of Greed. No matter what he did not prevail. This Witch of Greed was different to his sensei. However, Echidna was not mentally broken. She actually survived the bug of the domain. Probably because she wasn't sane in the first place. Echidna surmises that Ao is the weaker individual, making himself the victim. However, when there's a bug, the offender or the aggressor will take control. Ao understood. This stemmed from him being weak. The Castle of Dreams became a nightmare, and there was a bug in the domain. The cross of sin was so heavy. The witch laughed and said she will help him drag that sin. Ao looks at Echidna and says, "I will absolutely kill you." Ao will fulfill his role as the following star. "Why does the love fade?" Echidna says. Ao, however, did not know. He lost the witch. He lost the princess. The scene changes. Ao's thoughts were being crushed under pressure. Authorities went beyond human limits, and Petra's versatility was very good. To draw upon the power, your mind had to either be fixated on a single goal or be flexible due to weakness. The witches and sin archbishops belonged to the former category of being fixated on a single goal, whereas Aldebaran and Petra belonged to the second group, which was being flexible due to weakness. Ao, who was mentally exhausted, was being chipped away by this authority. Every mental gap was filled, causing him to waste mental energy. Ao made the optimal moves, and then felt called out to the old man. Old man Rom collapsed to the ground a second later. Ao was also shocked. His control of the domain was then passed to Rom, who became the aggressor. He was forced to relive events over and over again until he collapsed. Aldebaran did not consciously trigger it, because whenever it activated, it destroyed the heart of those consumed. Ao had a no-kill policy. He did not like this result, as it technically would result in the death of the heart. No one can defeat the you that I created. The opponents fulfilled the conditions to make the bug occur. In other words, Ao started doubting himself, his power, and the witch. and in the next second, another person fell down. "Oh God, oh Buddha, oh Lord Odlagna, I swear for the rest of my life to never love silence." Petra was called by the imaginary Subaru. She compressed everyone's panic. Petra compressed her distance to Rom. His face was pale, as if he aged 100 years. He was healthy usually. If something happened, he would obviously report it. Petra believes that Al's authority is the reason for Rom's state. Felt says that if they don't do something, they will end up the same way. She looked over and more people started collapsing. Felt also reckons it's the authority. After all, if it was magic, Ram would have noticed it. They look closely and see that Rem's fingers were dirty. Rom was tallying something before he collapsed. The scene changes. Even though Rom had fallen, the enemy did not give up, and each time they showed their resolve, Al's own weakness was laid bare. Every time he acknowledges his weakness, another person fell. Al couldn't counterattack. Garfiel was pressing him, and as a result, slowly the Aldebusters were falling one by one. "No one can defeat the you that I created." Another person fell. Al knew it was his fault, but Felt calls out to Aldebaran, saying that his demeanor is worse than Reinhard's. Reinhard would always take the blame and would have this weird look on his face, and currently Al had an even worse demeanor. It seemed that Al had somehow touched upon Felt's reverse scale. For those that don't understand the reverse scale reference, it's referring to the fact that Volcanica had a reverse scale, which was like his weak spot, and by having this weird sort of demeanor, that sort of triggered Felt. Felt says that Al was the princess's lapdog, and then asks if he even has a self. Aldebaran was mad. An ignorant girl did not know why he was called Aldebaran, but Al knew what he had to do. Detach, mock. Do not go along with your emotions. So Al simply says that Felt is right. The Aldebusters spewed insults towards Al, and the words of the witch continued to echo in Al's mind. "No one can defeat the you that I created." Al looks and realizes he needs to stop Petra. She was the person who was compressing his force. Al says that the stars were bad, and Felt says that that is Al's true feelings. Domain expansion, matrix redefinition. For the first time, Al intentionally triggered the domain bug. "Oh God, oh Buddha, oh Odlagna, I swear for the rest of my life to never to hope for anyone's kindness." Domain expansion, matrix redefinition. Hearing those words, Petra turned around. She had heard those words many times before, and Rom surmised that it was the activation conditions of Al's authority. The span was shorter than Subaru's return by death. Subaru says it's like in baseball, where you can save and load before every pitch, whilst also learning the position of all of the players. Petra says that is a very bad explanation. The Aldebusters slowly dwindled down, but the main attackers were still present. Garfiel, Ram, Felt. Petra was continuing to use her authority on Al. Felt then gave a rallying cry. It was now a fight of endurance. Who would break first, Al or the Aldebusters? But a second later, Petra's mouth fell open. A second ago, everyone was charging, but now everyone was on the floor. Ram, Garfiel, Felt, Flam, Grasses, Gaston, Chamberlain, everyone. Every last Aldebuster lost strength. No one could stand. Some fainted. Some lost focus from extreme exhaustion. Some froze like puppets, unable to move. Al stepped over the fallen bodies and said that the stars were bad. Al then reached out to Petra, who was frozen. The imaginary Subaru tells Petra to use her authority, and she warps away. Al looks at her and grabs empty space, before he says, "Play ball." Domain expansion, matrix redefinition. Al then muttered his saying afterwards, and then, a second later, Felt gives a rallying cry. Petra is confused. Why was everyone back to normal? But a second later, everyone collapsed again. and Al says that the stars were bad. The exact same declaration, the exact same follow-up actions, not prompted but driven by her own surging emotions. Petra then compressed and leapt backwards again, once more creating a distance between her and Al. She glared at Al, hearing his sigh. It was play ball. That marked the beginning of Petra Light's endless hell. And with that, the chapter ends. So, the amazing chapter, by the way. So, we finally got a confirmation on the victim versus aggressor role for Aldebaran. So, we were right. I made a video on Al's authority about how it sort of works. The only issue in my previous video was that I said it was a random gambler's luck if you got one role versus the other, but it seems like we now know the activation conditions to become the aggressor, which is Al has to doubt himself, and that will cause him to get that sort of role. Otherwise, he'll always get the victim role. So, yeah, it's over. Petra should hopefully lose. If she wins this, I'm not going to be happy. The only issue I have, by the way, is that Al pretty much says that when you get caught in the aggressor role, your heart will die. And so the reason why he doesn't like it activating is because everyone caught in it, so the Aldebusters, after they break free, they'll be changed people. So we might be heading towards a great reset, if I'm going to be honest with you. I don't see how we can save everyone. If their hearts and minds are broken, Ram got hit, Garfield got hit, Felt got hit. I don't understand like how we're going to get out of this unless Felt uses some next BS Mary Sue powers. Also, at the start, we learned this idea that the witches seem to retain some of their powers. But I'm not sure if that just means in the Castle of Dreams with Omega, because Echidna has not used anyone else's authorities outside of the Castle of Dreams. So, anyways, that's the chapter. See you guys next time.